What's going on, everybody? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and over the last couple of days or so, we all know that there's a big studio closure. We'll call it big, at least anyway. It's moderate size, to be honest, but at the same time, it's happened. It kind of came out of nowhere, and it shocked many people. And that, of course, is Telltale Games. We all know them from stuff like The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands, Batman, etc. And in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about Telltale as a studio and why I don't give a shit about this and why I think these people do not deserve pity. And the studio does not deserve pity. Now, of course, I will preface this whole thing by saying I don't mean the usual rank and file employees, the coders, the developers. I'm not talking about those guys. Those people are shit out of luck with a job, unfortunately, because of bad choices made by the studio, management and executives, which are arguably what Telltale actually is, or was. So remember, everything we talk about in this video basically discounts the regular rank and file, cog in the machine employees. Now back to what I actually am going to talk about. Now, I've mentioned several times in the past just how shitty Telltale Games as a studio usually actually is. This is reflected in their business practices as well as their management and their executive level decisions. And this isn't even going to go on and touch on the other conversation that this whole situation brings up. The one about unsustainable business practices, unsustainable game development costs and cycles, wages, fair treatment, etc. We're not even going into all of that. We're looking at Telltale specifically and their shittiness as a studio as a whole, which, like I said, is why I absolutely give no shits that they're gone. So let's start with my personal beef against Telltale and my first real tip-off about their shitty management structure and their shitty executive decisions and shitty practices. You might remember a couple of years ago when The Walking Dead Season 1 came out, and of course there was protracted delays and extended delays between the release of different episodes. Once it was finally over, once Season 1 was finished, they said, oh, we've learned from the mistakes, we've learned from our past, and now going forward, we're going to know what to do differently, what to do and what not to do, and we won't have these big delays and big protracted gaps between episodes when episodes are going to release. So what happens? The Walking Dead Season 2 comes around. Again, what happens? Super long extended delays between episodes. Season 2 finishes, the same bullshit statement comes out. Very reminiscent of Bungie every year, isn't it? At least when it comes to Destiny. But you're looking at the same deal after Walking Dead Season 2 finished. Oh, we've learned from our mistakes, we'll do the same thing going forward, we'll change all this, change all that, so we won't have these big delays and whatnot. Of course, then The Wolf Among Us comes out, and yes, what happened again? Boom, same fucking deal. Same bullshit statement comes out after it, the usual. So that was the first big thing when it came to Telltale Games and their shittiness and shadiness. But what was really the straw that broke the camel's back in my personal case was when Tales from the Borderlands came out. Now, of course, Tales from the Borderlands came out, episode 1, because like them all, they're all episodic games. And in the super extended gap between that is between episode 1 and 2 of Tales from the Borderlands, what they did was they not only extended the actual gap in there, it was terrible, possibly their biggest delay ever. They also announced 2 other series, a different separate project to work with Netflix, and they released 2 episodes of a different series, that one being Game of Thrones. And as I covered in a separate video before, this was all done specifically because Tales from the Borderlands, at the time they said it was making them money and it was profitable. It turns out this was actually a lie based on new info that has come out since the closure. But they were planning on leaving Tales from the Borderlands eventually unfinished because they wanted to move on to other projects to make actual more money and whatnot. So the only reason that Tales from the Borderlands was actually finished was because several team members who actually loved Borderlands themselves asked for permission to finish it on their own time because they hated to see it go like that and just not be done. So all of that was done, unpaid, finished on their own time. Now since then, I have completely vowed off all of Telltale Games. I haven't played any of their games that I've already owned and maybe played or not played before. I haven't even finished the rest of Tales from the Borderlands. I haven't played episode 2 or onwards, despite actually having a season pass for it, and I haven't played anything else that they've put out since. All of this is straight up on principle. These people, this company, do not deserve my time. Because as absolute scumbag shitheads that they are, they do not deserve my time. Obviously, I don't get my money anymore, but now they're not even entitled to my time. But I think that gives you a little bit of an idea of just how much of a kind of shitty studio and shitty management structure and executive decisions that they have. Again, we're not talking about the cogs here, we're talking about the actual guys in charge. And just to extrapolate, really show how bad all these choices and decisions and all actually were. Within the last 7 days before the studio actually closed or cut down to 25 members right before it finishes up and closes, despite having cancelled the majority of all their stuff, I don't believe any of that shit that they're talking about. It's like, oh, we're working with other studios to go with The Walking Dead final season. Blah. Fuck off, Telltale. I don't believe you at this point. Anyone who does is stupid, if you ask me. This company has been systematically and repeatedly caught at being bullshit artists. You're just fooling yourselves hoping for more. But anyway, it goes back to what I was saying a second ago. Within those last 7 days before they closed, they had hired new people. They had hired new members of the development team and whatnot. Some of which had to move across the entire US just to get to their new job. One of which even came from an international country, which naturally meant he or she would have been deported several days after the studio closed or they were laid off. Simply because that's how work visas expire, unless they manage to get another job in the next couple of days. But you'd be pretty hard pressed, especially when it comes to game development, to get something that quickly. But just think about it, the management and executive level stuff were making these decisions, but knowing the current state of the studio, they were still doing this. They were still hiring new people, moving new people across the country, or should I say making people move across, because I doubt they were paying for it. They even made someone move from a different country to work for them, and yet they knew they were in financial ruin. And all of this just leads back to some of the other stuff we found out about there. Previously, one of the ex-CEOs or ex-heads of the studio, or whatever his exact position was, actually went and sued the studio. There's all sorts of reports of all the crazy amounts of unpaid overtime. There's the whole Tales from the Borderlands situation. The fact that they hire people in a very shady way so that they don't have to give them proper benefits and proper pay and severance and whatnot. And not to mention the choices made by the management and the executives of the studio. But at the same time, it's the overall kind of toxic attitude. Apparently the general consensus was that the image the studio actually gave off was that, well, you don't need any of these benefits and all. It's a privilege for you to work here at all, even under these shitty contracts and shitty lack of benefits. It's a privilege for you to work at Telltale Games. So all I'm going to say is fuck you, Telltale Games. You're not going to be missed by me. Some people might miss your games, granted many of them were actually decent. And even though I've said it a few times, I'll just reiterate it again. I'm not talking about the coders, the developers, the people out there who were working the actual jobs, head down, doing the work. We're not talking about those people. We're talking about the people who actively made the decisions, the people who ran the studio into the ground. These people are Telltale Games. These people were Telltale Games. And these people were the studio and why it ran into the ground. Fuck them. They deserve absolutely nothing, in my opinion. No sympathy, no support, no fucking anything. So, fuck them. I'm glad people like that are out of a job. Granted, they'll probably get hired at some executive level or management level at a different studio and probably fuck that up too, or get fired. Anyway, that's the end of it for this video. Let me know in the comments section below your whole thoughts on the Telltale Games situation. Were you a fan of some of their games? Did you think they're absolute bullshit when it comes to games? Or what do you think of the whole situation with the studio? Are you one of the people who is probably going to be left with The Walking Dead final season unfinished? Let me know all that and anything about the whole situation in the comments section below. Hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video. While you're at it, why not go on over and hit that subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell. Granted, getting a notification from YouTube in current year about a new video or a live stream is a whole other story, but at least you can say you tried, am I right? As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.